are there in government or in with the charitable and we are making common mistakes. I think to avoid this common mistake in compliances and then we have to pay a big price for this mistakes and all. And that is the reason we are from the Lions Club of Mumbai Walkeshwar, we organized along with the Lions Club of Mumbai Corporate this charitable trust operation. And that is the reason we call Premal Gandhi sir. Thank you, Premal bhai, with us. I recognize the presence of the C. Hiral sir, the director of the Foundation for Skill Development, uh, Puneet Mehta, who is always supportive to us and giving the platform to the Lions Club and all the association. Thank you, Puneet, once again for providing IT support. I welcome the VTPA President Lion Advocate Jagdish Sharma ji on this auspicious day, and also our partner, I can say, in the twinning project, Lion Anil Pandya from the corporate for this function. Before proceed further, I also recognize the presence of Deepak Topiwala sir, our regional chairman activity of the last Zone 3231A1, Sundar Botra, Pankaj Surana, Lion Kuldeep Bhai, Ted, our first vice president, and all of you. And from the outstation, Shiv Kumar Dongreji, and most importantly, the treasurer of the GSTPM Association of Maharashtra, Shri Advocate Parth Badeka. I welcome him for this webinar. So thank you once again to all of you for your precious time, and let's study the charitable trust, which is one of the burning issue we can say in today's scenario. And like Mumbai, Walkeshwar, just I want to inform you, tomorrow also be our 12 service project on the 100 project we are going on. And we are also having the webinar on the 1st of September. We are planning on a tax audit. The issues on a tax audit controversy. The flyer will be given to you soon. Keep coming, keep joining with us, and let's have a better understanding of the knowledge and fellowship over here. Thank you once again to all of you. Warm welcome to all of you. Over to you, Khan.
Now I would like to invite CA Hiral Shah to give his opening remarks.
Thank you, Shabiji, for the opportunity. Here, one of the common things that we generally hear these days is with respect to charitable trust. Most of us would be in some form or some designation or the other involved with some of the at least any of the charitable trust. So the tagline which generally comes is compliance is very expensive. So many compliances, so much expensive. So I would just say if compliance seems to be expensive, then try non-compliance. Then we would come to know what are the repercussions thereof. On behalf of Foundation for Skill Development, I thank Premal Gandhi for extending his support by being the speaker for the day. Thank you. Over to you, Shavij.
Now I would like to request Advocate Jagdish Sharma, President of VTPA, to give his opening remarks.
Thank you, Sade. Lions C. Alok Mehta ji, President, Foundation for Skill Development and Lions Club of Walkeshwar, my friend Hiral ji, Parth ji, and all the members. And dear friend, nowadays the government have no trust on trust, and the provisions and the other things day by day stringent, and compliance is very hard to take care of all these things. And I'm sure that the speaker of today, CA Premal Gandhi ji, definitely entitled us and will smooth in our compliances in future. So thank you once again to all. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Over to say.
Now I would like to invite CA Anil Pandya, Charter President of Lions Club of Corporate, to give his opening remarks.
Thank you everyone, and welcome to this session of a very enlightening one on the topic of charitable trust. On behalf of Lions Club Mumbai Corporate and the Lions News India, I would like to acknowledge that this will be a very useful information which will be shared here to everyone out, not just in those who are in the conference right now, but anyone who is there outside and getting to their on our platform. So this is a really very good opportunity, and Premal Bhai would definitely be highlighting most of the important areas to touch upon. And I again thanks Aloji for taking such a wonderful initiative.
So before we proceed further, I briefly introduce today's speaker, Lion CA Premal Gandhi. Mr. Premal Gandhi is a chartered accountant and a commerce graduate from Mumbai University. He has completed his DIPIFR from ACCA London and DISA from ICAI. Over the last 5 years, he is now specializing in structuring and tax issues of charitable trust and its legal implications, both from BPT Act 1950 as well as the Income Tax Act 1961. Premal is currently working with quite prominent trust of large industrial houses as well as large charitable organizations, advising on their day-to-day issues. Contribution to professional and social bodies. Committee member on the NAS Committee of the WIRC, Managing Committee members of the Goods and Services Tax Association Maharashtra, Managing Committee member of the Chamber of Tax Consultants, peer reviewer, regular speaker on INDAS WIRC branches, study circle, Companies Act, bank audit, and various other topics of professional interest. With this, I request Lion CA Premal Gandhi to start today's topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Alok Bhai, the President of Foundation for Skill Development and Lions Club of Walkeshwar, Shri Anil Pandyaji, the Lions Mumbai Corporate, Shri Jagdish Sharma ji on behalf of the Vidharba Tax Practitioners Association, Shri Hiral Bhai, the Director of Foundation for Skill Development, very good friends and seniors, colleagues in the profession, dignitaries, some of the dignitaries on the stage. A real big thank you from the bottom of my heart for sparing time on a lovely Saturday evening to discuss the challenges of which are being currently faced or are thrust upon us as being part of charitable trusts. Rightly said by Hiral Bhai, today everybody looks charitable trust with so much of compliance work, and as he rightly said, let's look at the costs of the non-compliance. But before I start today's sessions, I always get reminded by a saying made by Vimal Punamaya ji in one of the sorry, was it for a and I think that is relevant and will remain relevant for probably ages to come. And in one of the seminars, he had said that God gave Indira Gandhi 3 wishes once, and asked her for the wishes. The first wish which Indira Gandhi said that, when will my son Sanjay Gandhi become president, Prime Minister of India? And God said that never. So she asked, when will my son Rahul become Prime Minister? Rajiv Gandhi become the Prime Minister. He said, after you. So after thinking for a while, Indira Gandhi says that this is the last option that I have. Might as well I use it judiciously. So she said, I'm getting bugged up every day in office with multiples of acts in India. I don't know when that acts will get converged into one act. God's reply was, never in my lifetime. So looking at that scenario, what Hiral Bhai says is becoming much more relevant, that probably not in our lifetime we may see some easy compliance or convergence of some act ever. But yet, while we are living, and we have to comply with the law of the land. Thank you once again. I would like to raise two questions for all of you, and maybe if you could answer them on the chat box, it will help us. I would like to know how many of you are the trustees or settlers in some of the foundations or charitable trusts or Section 8 companies or anywhere. Number one. And how many then, part B, are chartered accountants consultants to this trust? If you could maybe put up some. Vidharba, can they put their replies in the chat box? Is the chat box enabled? Yeah. So if somebody can, if you all could do it, it will help us just to understand much better. Thank you, Hiral. Yes, we are somewhere they're related, but obviously, at some places, maybe we may be trustees or directors, and some. Thank you. Thank you for giving those replies, and thank you once again for helping me take this mission forward of spreading knowledge, as well as addressing the practical difficulties faced by the charitable trust. I would like to share my screen just 1 minute. Hope my screen is visible. Hiral, is my screen visible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Sure. Thank you. While I have this presentation ready, and which will be shared subsequently for the class members at large, I would request everybody, if they have some questions, they can put it up in the chat box and we can take it forward. Or if somebody wants to raise a, I mean, Hiral, how do we generally do it? Do they raise their hands or?
Sir, better that we post it in chat box only. Otherwise, at times it becomes a bit of commotion.
Thank you. Agreed. So while somebody may post their questions on the chat box, and I will make sure that before I leave over here, I will reply to each and every query that is raised. And I'm also sure that we as a group would definitely learn something new out or ensure that we carry much more things today. And I will strive to ensure that, obviously, so that your time spent is judiciously used. Thank you. So while I have the provisions over here, but I will typically try and give more examples so as to ensure that the challenges that are real life being faced can be addressed. I am pretty sure most of you understand that typically now, if any corpus donations are received, or first of all, the trust can receive either voluntary donations or corpus donations. And corpus donations obviously need to be received, or are donations which are received with a specific intent to be used for a particular activity only. As per the latest amendments, be it voluntary contributions or corpus donations, both of them need to be invested as per the provisions of Section 11(5) of the Act, and which is the specified modes in which it has to be deposited. The Act nowhere says what is the frequency of that deposition, but the common parlance as it is understood or agreed between all the practitioners is that typically you can't do it on a daily basis. Do you do it on a daily basis, a weekly basis, fortnightly, monthly? It may not be possible to do it on a daily or a fortnightly basis, because if you keep receiving donations say 5,000 today, 10,000 tomorrow, will you be able to do that particular small FDs or small depositions? The answer would be no. Given yet, while you don't want to exactly as Vidharba said, do a non-compliance. So what the practitioners have agreed is that maybe if we look at a practical approach to it, we could make a practical approach by saying that let's look at the amount of contributions that we've received in the 1 month period and maybe make us FD, a fixed deposit with a scheduled cooperative bank or a cooperative bank or a nationalized bank or any bank as which is covered under by the RBI license for the FDs for a particular month. Obviously, the amendments say that where you have a corpus donations, you need to have an identified fixed deposits against those corpus donations. So to that extent, maybe you may have to bifurcate maybe at the year end separately. Other well-known understood fact is that typically under 11.1, if you have to spend minimum 15%, sorry, minimum 85% of the total voluntary contribution that you have received. So let's assume the trust receives total 100 rupees. This 100 rupees means voluntary contributions, and this voluntary contributions does not include corpus donations, mind well. Therefore, if the trust has received 200 rupees, 100 rupees corpus donations, 100 rupees voluntary contributions. Therefore, you are supposed to spend 85% of the voluntary contributions, that is 85% of 100 rupees and not 85% of 200 rupees. Let's be very clear on that, number one. Number two, the income tax expects you to spend minimum 85% of the voluntary contributions received. And typically the word used is application. So application means the spending. Application also means now that the amount actually spent. So though you may be in most trust under the accounting norms, we follow accrual system of accounting, and thereby you may book certain expenses, but those are on accrual. If you book certain expenses or not, whereas the payment has not been done, then you are typically not allowed to claim that application in the year in which you booked those expenses but did not pay for those expenses. So typically you will be only allowed when you actually make the payment. So 85% has to be strictly as per the payment basis minimum. So that brings to a question that what happens, we look at two different scenarios. What happens if you can't make a payment, I mean, can't spend 85%, or if you spend 85, then what happens? Continuing with our example of that 100 rupees that was received, let's assume you have spent 87 rupees. Then that balance 13 rupees is a surplus. And as per the provisions, that 13 rupees is deemed to have been applied, and therefore no tax is payable on that 13 rupees. Let's assume that in the second scenario, you've spent only 83 rupees for whatever reasons. Then since you are supposed to spend 85%, which is 85 rupees, but you spent 83 rupees. So the differential will become of 83 and 85, that is 2 rupees, will be obviously taxable. So the entire 17 rupees, that 15 rupees is a deeming provision, and therefore if you do not spend the money or if you fall short, then the entire 17 rupees will become taxable. Obviously, you will get the minimum threshold of 2,50,000, which is applicable for trust as the basic exemption limit that will be granted to you. But that 17 rupees entire will become taxable, subject to exemption of 2,50,000. I always get this question that many times that this 15% is suo motu, and I beg to differ on that, because that 15% is not suo motu. it comes with the condition that you should spend the 85. Only and only if you have spent 85%, then only that 15% is deemed to be applied. And therefore, it is not a standard deduction that you will get. Let us be very, very clear. Other aspects which come into the picture is what happens for that. Continuing with our same example of 83 rupees, there is a process where you could, if certain conditions are there, if you could not apply it, but if you have applied in the subsequent years, or you want to do some big project where it may spread over subsequent years, or it includes certain capital expenditures, then how do you ensure that it is to be done in future? So you may accumulate the money, wherein those monies could be used over a period of future periods. Then there are certain forms to be filled in, and you could accumulate those amounts either to be spent in the next year or in the next 5 years, so as to ensure that that money is not taxable in the year of receipt, but to be carried forward in the subsequent period, and which is called as accumulation, which I will come back to in the subsequent slides. And if we fill up these forms, then obviously those amounts are again removed, and you will have to recompute your 85% accordingly. Now, let's take an example of a trust. And when I'm saying trust in general, I mean, while I'll be speaking on the entire session as trust, but typically trust generally includes a society, which is registered under a Societies Registration Act, as well as a Section 8 company, the erstwhile Section 25 companies, which are formed under the Companies Act 1956, or Section 8 companies now under the Companies Act 2013. All three remain as are, for the income tax purposes, they are assumed to be on the same parlance. And therefore, while I call trust, so it is not technically the trust, which is only the trust, but is applicable to all these three forms of entities that I referred to. Let's assume a trust, say, receives a substantial amount of voluntary contribution somewhere around end of March. Now, obviously, since it's a voluntary contribution, there is no instructions or suggestions from the contributors as to the pattern in which this expenditure has been to be done, or an application has to be done. Obviously, the trust has a particular policies or trust deed which will guide the activities that needs to be done. Majority, this trust activities will be in the 7 limbs, which is prescribed under the Section 215 of the Income Tax Act, which is education, knowledge, medical relief, yoga, and other aspects. The residual category of the 7th is general public utility, any other general public utility. So typically the 7 limbs are in which these activities are done. So since it's a voluntary contribution, the guidance is not given by the payees as to how they want the trust to spend their money. Given the background that let's assume the educational trust, and there's a trust which does educational activities, and it has received substantial amount of money after 15th of March. How do we go about in this scenario? Obviously, it may not be able to spend the entire money between the period 15th of March and say 31st of March. That is scenario number 1. Scenario number 2, it has monies lying in fixed deposits, the income of which is accrued in a particular year but not received. As we all know, We may have kept fixed deposits for various spread over various times. And while we have a financial year cutoff due to the legislature, the actual practical fixed deposits may or may not be in sync with those deadlines. So how do we spend that money, or substantial money received, or the substantial money accrued over the years? In either of those scenarios, typically explanation 1 to 11 to 1 will cover the scenarios, and there it says that if either the whole of the money is not received or is received, but for any particular reason we are not able to spend or apply the income, then you have an option under the income tax rules where a form 9A can be filed. If you don't exercise this option, then what will happen is the shortfall that I earlier said, since the money will be taken as 100 rupees, in continuing with my earlier example, and your application will be less than 85%, and therefore the differential subject to 2 lakh exemption of 2,50,000 will be taxable at 30%, right? But if you exercise this option, which is the form in 9A, then the amount that you spend in the year of receipt next year, which is the next year, till the date of filing of return under 139(1), you can apply that much of income as deemed to have been applied in the previous year. So the point that I'm trying to make, let's continue with our example, that on 15th of March, we received, say, let's say 10 lakh rupees. Obviously, this was in addition to the other income of 30 lakh rupees that we had received. So the total income received in that particular year was 40 lakh rupees. We have spent only, say, 25 lakh rupees till March on the educational activities. Typically, if we look, then 25 lakhs divided by 40 lakhs is not meeting the 85% criteria. And obviously, if you look at 85%, it will be 34 lakh rupees. So the differential of 9 lakhs would have been taxable at 30% under 115 BPI. But if we apply the logic of by filing Form 9, the trust would have had the opportunity to spend the money in the next year. But till what time? Obviously, in the previous year, in the next year, the time limit specified is before 139(1), and which is October. One clarification that I would like to make over here, the Income Tax Act was amended from this year to state that the forms, both Form 9A, which I'm referring to at this point of time, and Form 10, which I will subsequently refer to, has to be filed minimum 2 months prior to the date as mentioned under Section 139(1), and therefore the date of filing of ITR was 31st of October, and the 2 months prior to that becomes 31st of August. So I've been recently getting a lot of phone calls from many of our friends saying that, sir, charitable trust के लिए Form 9A and Form 10 file करना है, but 31st August due date है, whereas अभी तक in site पे Form 10B और 10BB, the audit report के formats which I will subsequently cover, वो तो देख नहीं रहे, तो कैसे comply करेंगे हम? How do we go about? So the clarification जो मेरे को करनी है वहां पे, वो मैं ये कहना चाहूंगा कि there is a circular number 6 of 2023 issued by the Income Tax Department on 24th May 2023, where they have covered this particular aspects. Para 15 and Para 16 very clearly of that circular says a lot of representations have been received by the department from practitioners like us, whereas trustees and practitioners like you, कि भाई रिटर्न फाइलिंग की ड्यू डेट है 31 अक्टूबर, आप कह रहे हो कि फॉर्म 9 और फॉर्म 10 अगस्त में ही फाइल कर दो। अगर फॉर्म 9 या फॉर्म 10 9A या 10 पहले ही हमको फाइनल हो जाता तो हम रिटर्न ही 31 अगस्त को फाइल कर देते ना, बिकॉज हमारा ऑडिट कंप्लीट हो जाएगा, हमारी सब कुछ कंप्लीट हो जाएगी, तभी है तो वी कैन आइडेंटिफाई कि हमको 9 कितना 9 हम यू स्पेंड कर पा रहे या कितना हमको अक्यूमुलेट करना है फ्यूचर के लिए। And the income tax has agreed to that aspect, and they have mentioned over there in that circular that they will not deny the exemptions if the form 9A or form 10 is filed on or before the due date as specified under 139(1). But to clarify, अगर आपने रिटर्न पहले फाइल कर दिया before 31st of October and आप 9A और 10 उसके बाद भर रहे हो, तो then it is not valid. You cannot take the benefit of this circular because जो 139(1) की due date है is 31st October, yes, but 139(1) very clearly says that if you finish the filing of the ITR, then it is due date of filing of ITR or the actual date of filing of ITR, whichever is earlier. So let's example, अगर आपने 15 अक्टूबर को फाइल कर दिया तो 9A और 10 both has to be filed before 15th of October, or if you file the ITR on 31st October, then 31st October. So just a small clarity. Where you may say कि मैंने लेट फाइल कर दिया तो क्या फॉर्म 9A या 10, so there is a provision where the commissioner of income tax exemption has been given a power to condone the delay, and there are guidelines given under that in the recent circular of May 23 also, and one circular of earlier years also, which is covered along with this in this recent circular. So there the delay provisions will come, delay condonation provisions will come into picture, but we need to remember that the due date will be 139(1) and therefore not 31st August, which is what sab log are scared of. Coming back, so if you come back to our example, that 9 lakh rupees difference, the 34 minus 25 which you spend, so आपको 15 लाख रुपए अगर आपने नेक्स्ट ईयर में स्पेंड कर दिए हैं या उसमें से 9 लाख रुपए भी स्पेंड कर दिए हैं बिफोर October 23, then you can file a form 9A on the income tax portal saying that this is the amount we had received and out of which we have spent in the current year 9 lakh rupees. Then that 9 lakh rupees would be deemed to have been spent as on 31st of March 2023, and that 85% as computed in 11(1) will be covered, and you will the entire balance 6 lakhs rupees, 34 lakhs minus 40 lakhs, the 15% differential will be deemed to have been applied, and you won't pay a single amount of tax on that. Similarly, another example where as that 40 lakhs rupees included, say that 15 lakh rupees of interest which was accrued, and obviously the interest was actually received in the subsequent year, then the same logic shall apply. And if you spend that much of money, then you are allowed to again deemed to have been applied in the previous year. Let's take this forward. Obviously, what will also happen is, let's assume that if you cannot spend the money before for various reasons, not spend it before the due date as specified in 139(1). So you could not spend the money, the 15 lakh rupees till October 23. You have one more provision where आप उसको accumulate कर सकते हो. Accumulate करके the trust wants to say कोई बड़ा बिल्डिंग बनाना है और कोई चैरिटेबल एक्टिविटी, जैसे एजुकेशनल इंस्टीट्यूशन को कोई नई इंस्टीट्यूट खड़ी करनी है, तो 15 लाख रुपए उसको मिला है, बट 15 लाख रुपए से उसका कुछ होने वाला नहीं है, उसको 1.5-2 करोड़ 4 करोड़ की इंस्टीट्यूट बनानी है। नहीं, तो दे कैन, द बोर्ड ऑफ ट्रस्टीज आर पावर्ड टू accumulate that money and they believe कि हमको और भी फ्यूचर में पैसे आएंगे एंड हम एक साथ accumulate करके लैंड लेंगे, उसमें बिल्डिंग बनाएंगे और एजुकेशनल इंस्टीट्यूशन बनाएंगे, तो इन द नेक्स्ट 5 years then they can accumulate the money. आपको मैक्सिमम टाइम फ्रेम फॉर accumulation is maximum 5 years from the end of the year in which you receive it. Obviously, one allied thing that you need to do is that you, as a board of trustees, you will also have to pass a resolution to say कि हम ये accumulation करना चाह रहे हैं and हम ये accumulation में से इस तरह spend करना चाहते हैं. So what you have to specify is the broad nature of activity that you intend to do. Obviously, in my example that I gave you, आपको ये करना था कि एक एजुकेशनल एक्टिव इंस्टीट्यूशन फॉर्म करनी है, तो आपके पास एक रफ एस्टिमेट रहेगा कि मेरी लैंड सपोज करिए 10 करोड़ में से 3 करोड़ रुपए की लैंड रहेगी, 2 करोड़ की बिल्डिंग रहेगी, मेरे बाकी के ये रहेंगे, तो आपको एक पैसे जब आप 15 लाख रुपए एक्यूमुलेट कर रहे हो तो आप उसमें वो लिख सकते हो कि मैं ये खर्चे लैंड की तरफ करूँ, एंड देन ऑब्वियसली इट इज डीम्ड टू हैव बीन स्पेंट. आपको उस साल में अगेन द डीमिंग फिक्शन मिल जाएगा उसके लिए, एंड इट विल बी अज्यूम्ड दैट यू स्पेंड द मनी एंड द मनी कैन बी कैरिड फॉरवर्ड. अगेन ये जो अक्यूमुलेशन आपने किया हुआ है उसको भी आपको फिक्स डिपॉजिट में रखना पड़ेगा अंडर 11(5). सो वो तो कंपल्सरी है. फ्यूचर में विद इन द नेक्स्ट 5 years जिस साल में आप उसमें से पैसा खर्चा करोगे, आपको उसी सामने अगेन उस साल में जब फॉर्म्स भरोगे उसके सामने आइडेंटिफाई करके देना पड़ेगा कि हमने इतने खर्चे, इस साल में हमने 15 लाख रुपए एक्यूमुलेट किया था और उसमें से एक पोर्शन हम अभी स्पेंड कर रहे हैं, तो उतना पैसा उस साल में भी आप स्पेंड कर सकते हो. उसका एक पर्टिकुलर एग्जांपल भी मैं लूंगा बाद में. And therefore that amount is not taxable. What we also need to remember is there are other provisions which are applicable to normal income entities in income tax, and which is 40A3. Obviously, I will not like to mention particular sections, but typically जो TDS के provisions है, या आप कैश एक्सपेंडिचर अबाउट 10,000 नहीं कर सकते हो ऑन अ सिंगल डे विद अदर देन दी बैंक, आई मीन अकाउंट पे चेक्स और डीडी और ईसीएस. द सेम रूल्स विल अप्लाई ओवर हियर आल्सो. सो आई कम अक्रॉस मेनी सिचुएशंस कि जहां पे लोग बोलते हैं कि ट्रस्ट में से हमने किसी लॉयर्स को या प्रोफेशनल फीस दे दी है, या चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट को फी दे दी है अबाउट 30,000 इन अ ईयर, या कोई कॉन्ट्रैक्टर को पेमेंट्स कर दिया, तो जो टीडीएस रूल्स विल अप्लाई, द सेम रूल्स विल अप्लाई ओवर हियर आल्सो. कॉमन चैलेंजेस फेस्ड बाय ट्रस्ट के काफी सारे टाइम उनको कैश में पेमेंट्स करने पड़ते हैं, तो अगेन यू विल हैव टू लुक एट कि भाई आप 10,000 से ज्यादा पेमेंट ना करो डेली. ये एक दूसरा, since everybody of us would know that there have been special provisions introduced for, though they have not mentioned Ayodhya temple, but they have said that 82B में कोई भी restoration या renovation होता है, तो then that temple, mosque, gurudwara can receive any corpus donations or any voluntary contributions, and it can be carried forward. The logic behind bringing this special amendment was that while a lot of money was received by the Ayodhya temple board for constructing the temple, राम चंद्र भूमि पे टेम्पल कंस्ट्रक्ट कर रही है एंड उसके लिए काफी पैसे आ गए, बट since it's again a trust which is registered under the Income Tax Act under Section 12AB, and 80G के provision, उन्होंने 80G के लिए भी registration लिया हुआ है. So they were facing a challenge with this 85% that we had discussed. So एक special amendment लेके आए, but since that would have raised an issue with the common people that why so with for Ayodhya temple itself. That's why they've very categorically worded as temple, mosque, gurudwara or church. So tomorrow, if a big church is also coming up, then something like this can, but they have very clearly said that they will notify certain places, and that's where the Ayodhya temple has been notified over there. So what will happen is the money that was received as voluntary contributions, they need not use Form 910, but the special provisions have been granted that they can be utilized for repairs or renovations. And obviously, it will not be donated to any person. Obviously, 11.5 regulations are applicable to them also. I'm pretty sure they will ensure that no violations in done on that aspect, because they themselves want to take care of these provisions. Next, as I said, obviously the corpus donations are not to be counted for the total percentage of 85%. Obviously, as you know, corpus donations come with a specific rider. Typically, if we go back to our example of educational institutes, if somebody, let's assume, gives 50 lakh corpus donation, and आपने काफी बार पेपर में पढ़ा होगा कि some corporate or some prominent person has given a corpus donation to an institute. I mean, I can give the example, real life example. IITs is very, very common, where they get a lot of this corpus donations because somebody has earned a lot of money and they want to give it as a corpus donations back to their alma mater. And therefore, this corpus donations, when they receive, the person who has given this donation gives with a specific intent कि sir, इसको इसी हिसाब से यूज करिएगा. अगर आप एक पर्टिकुलर कोई नई विंग स्टार्ट कर रहे हो तो आप ये पैसे उसमें खर्च करिएगा. So then, though that money was received in that particular year, it will not be counted as a part of voluntary contribution. It will be separately crafted, and जो उसकी voluntary contributions है उसके 85% उनको spend करनी, ये corpus के 85% नहीं spend करनी. There are situations where the trust may spend money out of that corpus donations. Out of a particular, suppose जैसे मैंने एग्जांपल दिया आपको कि एक कॉर्पस सेटअप किया हुआ है फॉर एजुकेशन रिलीफ, बट आपको कोई और अदर एक्टिविटी करनी थी तो आपने वहां से पैसे विड्रॉ कर लिए और स्पेंड कर दिए, अप्लाई कर दिए. टिपिकली यू विल नॉट गेट द एप्लीकेशन इन द ईयर आपने जब स्पेंड किए. प्लीज रेफर और मार्क माय वर्ड्स कि अपने कॉर्पस से पैसे निकाले, नॉट द वॉलंटरी कॉन्ट्रीब्यूशंस. आपके पास कोई कॉर्पस था, कॉर्पस में से पैसे निकाले हुए फॉर द एक्टिविटीज विच इज नॉट पार्ट ऑफ द कॉर्पस स्पेसिफिकली, या आपने ट्रस्ट में लोन ली है, उसमें से कोई एक्टिविटी करनी है. इन बोथ दो सिनेरियोस, भले आपने वो खर्चे उस साल में अप्लाई कर दिए या स्पेंड कर दिए, फिर भी आपको उसकी एप्लीकेशन नहीं मिलेगी. नाउ द इनकम टैक्स सेज दैट इन द नेक्स्ट 5 years, जिस भी साल में आप लोन रीपे कर देते हो या वो पैसे वापस कॉर्पस में लेके आते हो, उस साल में आपको एप्लीकेशन मिलेगी उसकी. सो व्हाट विल हैपन इज, लेट्स अज्यूम आपने AY 23-24 में एक लोन ली थी एजुकेशनल इंस्टीट्यूट को फॉर्म करने के लिए 50 लाख रुपए की, पर तो आपको उस लोन पे आपको एप्लीकेशन नहीं मिलेगी फॉर AY 23-24, बट 27-28 AY 27-28 दैट इज फाइनेंशियल ईयर 26-27 में सपोज आपने लोन रीपे कर दी, ट्रस्ट ने लोन रीपे कर दी, so it will be allowed in AY 27-28 that is financial year 26-27. So while you are spending the money in AY 23-24 but still not getting the benefit in that particular year, you will get the benefit in the subsequent year only. I mean the same example मैंने already जो है example दे दिया है. In this, obviously, the trust has received wants to construct a building of 80 lakhs and 80 lakhs rupees HDFC से लिए हुए हैं, but trust ने 30 lakhs AY 24-25 में पे किया, 50 लाख रुपीस उसके बाद वाले साल में दिए, तो 30 lakhs AY 24-25 में मिलेंगे और AY 26-27 में बैलेंस मिलेंगे. सो जिस साल में आप रीपे करोगे आउट ऑफ कॉर्पस बैक और या लोन रीपे करोगे, तो टू द एक्सटेंट ऑफ रीपेमेंट एंड सब्जेक्ट टू दैट क्लॉज ऑफ 5 years उतने आपको मिलते जाएंगे. सो as trustees or as settlers or consultants, we need to be very, very clear that the trust ensures that this compliance is done. Varna, it will be your deduction may go off, your application will not be counted and you may end up paying tax in that year. In if आपने repayment 5 साल के बाद किया, तो you will not get any benefit. या corpus आपका 5 साल के बाद वापस repay हुआ, तो भी आपको benefit नहीं मिलेगा. So that there is an now a very clear amendment के 5 साल के अंदर ही कर देने हैं. जैसे मैंने पहले कहा था कि आपको accrual basis पे रहते अपने, but we need to take the whatever is the actual money spent. So if we incur certain expenditure, book certain expenditure on accrual basis, but spend it in the subsequent years, then it will be counted in the year in which it is spent and not on accrual basis. Because ये एक current year की I mean last year finance bill 22 से ये amendment लिखा है, so it is applicable for this year and subsequent years. This I have already covered in the sense के अगर 85% नहीं आपने spend किया तो क्या, ये maximum आप 5 साल के लिए carry forward कर सकते हो. Form 10 जो मैंने कहा था, let's assume और let's take a scenario कि आप 5 साल के अंदर आपने accumulate किया था, अपना educational institute वाला ही example, but for whatever reasons you could not spend the money, then what? क्योंकि आपने एक साल में ऑलरेडी उसकी accumulation ले लिया था, आपने उसको वहां पे ऑलरेडी डीमिंग फंक्शन में आपने it was applied in that 85% and obviously 11.5 में वो आपने फिक्स डिपॉजिट में रखी हुई है पैसे, या जो भी 11.5 के सब्सिक्वेंट पैराग्राफ में आएंगे कि व्हाट आर द एलिजिबल मोड्स अंडर 11.5, तो आपने वो सारे मोड्स में पैसे रखे हुए हैं. देन व्हाट? टिपिकली द एक्ट सेज कि अगर आप सपोज फॉर व्हाटएवर रीजन आप जितना पैसा खर्च कर चुके विद इन द नेक्स्ट 5 years, the balance amount will become taxable in the 5th year itself. So earlier it was taxable in the 6th year, now it is applicable, it will be taxable in the 5th year itself, and the trust will have to pay tax over there in that year itself. एक ये फॉर्म 10 की एक और एक allied issue है कि you cannot use the money once you have accumulated the money, आप उसको कोई और अदर ट्रस्ट को डोनेशन के थ्रू नहीं दे सकते हो. यू हैव टू एक्चुअली स्पेंड द मनी. सो जब आप फॉर्म 10 भर रहे हो, बी वेरी वेरी क्लियर और बी वेरी वेरी प्रिसाइज कि सपोज आपको लैंड के लिए करना है या कंप्यूटर्स के लिए करना है या स्पेसिफिक कोई पर्पस है. आप फॉर्म 10 में जनरल पर्पसेस नहीं लिख सकते हो. या वेग ऑब्जेक्ट्स नहीं लिख सकते हो, because in the assessments you will get rejected. Those Form 10 accumulations will get rejected. We have seen scenarios where vague Form 10s have been filed और वो reject हो गया है and causing huge losses, because the challenge will be that scrutiny or any other provisions, notices will come after some point of time, whereas उस साल की 139(1) तो already खत्म हो गई होगी, and बाद में if it gets rejected then automatically the liability gets generated, whereas आप बोलोगे कि मैंने तो accumulation कर दिया था और डीमिंग प्रोविजंस के हिसाब से मेरे को कोई टैक्स भी नहीं पे करना था उस पे, बट नाउ दैट अ न्यू the tax has already got applied. So be very specific as far as the filing of Form 10 is considered, and please ensure that you spend the money, obviously not pay, give it as a donation to the trust, because obviously that is also not allowed. इन 5 सालों में सपोज करिए, I mean, I'll give this example because a portion of the periods was in the last 5 years, everybody had COVID, gone through COVID, which was a period where nobody could do something, or there have been periods कि जहाँ पे कोर्ट के orders रहे हैं कि those situations कि जब ये अब आप पैसे अप्लाई नहीं कर सकते, काफी बार बैंक अकाउंट्स फ्रीज हो जाते हैं, and I will give you a live example which will subsequently come in the slides, why at many times majority of you as trustees or as settlers need to be very careful today. Most of us have seen that scenarios कि वहाँ पे बैंक अकाउंट्स फ्रीज हो जाते हैं. I'll give you the particular examples also subsequently. बट अगर बैंक अकाउंट फ्रीज हो गया और आप कुछ नहीं कर सकते, 5 साल का पीरियड भी खत्म हो गया, देन व्हाट? सो दैट कोर्ट इंजंक्शन ऑर्डर्स जहां पे रहेंगे, तो दोस पीरियड्स विल बी एक्सक्लूडेड. The commissioner exemptions has the power to delay in certain genuine exceptional scenarios, but that is restricted to 1 year only, and that power is to be used very judiciously by them. So in my practice, I have seen very few instances where they have given this condonation for trust के वो 5 साल में spend नहीं कर पाए and yet get it condoned. There have been very limited examples of that. So once you accumulate, please ensure कि आप 5 साल में spend कर डालो. जैसे मैंने कहा था, this is the list of all the safe investments that you have to make. You can either make investment in UTI certificates, government saving schemes, deposits, post office banks, scheduled banks, cooperative banks, infrastructure investment in bonds of approved financial corporations, public companies provided long-term finance. Here I will like to bring one very important point. These bonds needs to be approved and be backed by a state or a central government. Many times मेरे को काफी सारे ट्रस्ट से फोन आता है कि सर हमारे कोई एडवाइजर ने बोला है कि ये फलाना कंपनी एक इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर बॉन्ड लेके आई है जिसमें 11% 12% दे रहे हैं, should we invest that money? And they are saying, the advisor is saying कि सर आप इसमें डाल सकते हो एज अ चैरिटेबल ट्रस्ट और 11(5) में आप क्लेम कर सकते हो. My answer to them is that is it backed, the interest repayment of it is backed by a state government or central government? If yes, then you are allowed to make it under 11(5). If no, then you are not allowed. But बोलता है सर वो तो प्राइवेट लिमिटेड कंपनी की है and they are saying आपको 11(5) में allowed है. There is a lot of mis-selling going on in the market. वो आपको भी पता होगा, वो एडवाइजर at times को limited interest है for his commissions. Please do not fall into that trap. Investment in immovable properties covered in 11.5, also covered over there. बाकी majority generally लोग fixed deposit कर देते हैं या banks में पैसे रखते हैं. So that is the common where people make investments under to comply with 11.5. Majority of the places I'll be using now 11.5 as safe investment mode, because once you make an investment in 11.5, typically आज की तारीख में आपकी सब जगह पे सब sections में वो cover करता है. So let's, for a simplicity purpose, let's understand this as safe investment. Obviously, as trustees and settlers, we are or consultants at times we are related, and let's understand the definition of related. So section 13 very clearly says who is the relative person of a trust, basically an author or founder or trustee. Person जिसने 50,000 से ज्यादा पैसे दिए हो, अगर एक HUF member है trustee का, then the member of HUF, trustee or manager, any relative of founder, donor, member, or any of the persons where it has substantial interest. So typically what will happen if I am say as trustee as well as a trustee in a founder trust, and मैं एक CA firm में partner भी हूँ, then that CA firm will also become a related person. Any transactions between the relatives will get covered over here. What happens is, the moment it is a relative, then any transactions made within by this persons has to be any within reasonable nature. Let's assume कि आपने ट्रस्टी को एजुकेशनल ट्रस्ट में कोई ट्रस्टी है who is rendering his services by giving lectures. आपने उनको कोई honorarium भी पे किया. If that honorarium is within the arm's length price, if I may use that terminology, then there is no challenge. But if you are paying him more than what his any normal person would get that honorarium, then the differential will get taxed. Let's take another example where I am a trustee and I have some I have a property. The property is given on rent to the trust, and rent is being paid by the trust. Now, सपोज करें मेरे एरिया में 100 रुपए का स्क्वायर फीट चल रहा है. मैंने अगर ट्रस्ट को 100 रुपए या 100 रुपए से कम पर स्क्वायर फीट पे चार्ज किया, देन देयर इज नो प्रॉब्लम. बट मेरी एरिया में 100 रुपए की स्क्वायर फीट चल रही है और मैं ट्रस्ट को 200 रुपए पे कर रहा हूँ, देन ऑब्वियसली it is a related party transaction, and to that extent it will become taxable because of the meanings covered in 13.3. एक common challenge that most trust को आती है, and I get regularly this queries, कि सर हमको कैश में काफी डोनेशंस आते हैं, कैश में लोग आके दे के जाते हैं हमको पैसा, how do we do it? Typically you are not allowed, as a trust is not allowed to receive any money above 2,000 rupees in cash. And if you receive cash above 2,000, then you are supposed to maintain the PAN or Aadhaar numbers of the trustee along with their address and other relevant details. What happens अगर आपने नहीं maintain किया तो? So then this donation will become anonymous donation. The anonymous donation is taxable. Typically 115 BBC में ये बोलता है कि 5% of your total donations, corpus as well as government grant, voluntary contributions, या 1 लाख रुपया, इन दोनों का higher जो भी amount है, that will become the will be taxable at 30% of the anonymous donations. Obviously, आपका बैलेंस हैज टू बी चार्ज एट द नॉर्मल टैक्स रेट व्हाट वी हैव ऑलरेडी डिस्कस कि 85% अगर आपने उसमें स्पेंड कर दिया तो बैलेंस अमाउंट विल बिकम डीम्ड प्रोविजंस, वो सब रहेंगे. दिस इज स्पेशल प्रोविजंस रिलेटेड टू अनोनिमस डोनेशंस, एंड उसके लिए एक स्पेशल सेक्शन भी है 115 बीबीसी. देयरफॉर काफी सारी जगह पे लोग इसका सरकमवेंशन करने के लिए ये करते हैं कि अलग अलग दिनों पे अलग अलग रिसीट्स करते हैं कि हमको 2000 आज फलाना आके दे, मगन भाई दे के गया, कल मिस्टर बी आए वो 2000 दे के गए. बट आफ्टर अ पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम मैं उन सब ट्रस्टीज को ये कहता हूं कि हाउ मच कंप्लायंस आर यू इंक्रीजिंग, आप कितनी रिसीट्स बनाओगे, एंड फॉर एवरी रिसीट दैट यू मेक देयर इज अ कंप्लायंस अटैच्ड. सो माइट एज वेल यू लुक एट कि भाई आप उसको भले अगर आपको कैश मिला हो तो भी आप उसके पास से पैन कार्ड, आधार कार्ड, पैन आधार और अदर इंफॉर्मेशन लेके हाउ कैन यू कम आउट ऑफ दिस सेक्शन typically. But this is a problem area and a great problem area which I come practically I force. मतलब हम हमारे जो मेजॉरिटी ट्रस्ट जहाँ पे हम इन्वॉल्व है, हम रेगुलरली हेल्थ चेकअप्स करते हैं फॉर नॉन कंप्लायंस एंड नॉन कंप्लायंस, एंड मेजॉरिटी जगह पे हमने ये देखा है कि ये चैलेंजेस हो जाती रहती है, and that's where we've advised them, and now I'll be very happy to say that most of them have either taken a stand कि सर हम जो भी पैसे आएंगे उसमें यार 2000 के नीचे है तो उनको ठीक है, 2000 के ऊपर है तो उनको बोलते हैं कि भाई आप हमको पैन कार्ड, आधार कार्ड दो. इनफैक्ट टू सम एक्सटेंट सम ट्रस्ट जहाँ पे ये प्रॉब्लम्स आ रहे थे, और द मैनेजमेंट वाज वेरी प्रोएक्टिव, उन्होंने ये भी किया कि भाई उन्होंने पेटीएम, बिकॉज काफी सारी जगह पे क्या होता है कि आज लोग कैश लेके नहीं घूमते, दे प्रेफर टू पे बाय पेटीएम और अदर मैकेनिज्म्स, एंड व्हाट हैपेंस हाउ उसने पेमेंट तो कर दिया बट उसके पास डिटेल्स नहीं है आपको शेयर करने के लिए या वो देना नहीं चाहता. So there also we've suggested कि sir when they make payments about 2000, you ask them for your PAN cards, Aadhaar cards, or take their addresses, because this is mandatorily required by the trust. As you as trustees or owners, you are compulsorily required to make it. वो तो जो पर्सन पे कर रहा है वो आपको दे के चला गया, उसकी लायबिलिटी वहां पे खत्म हो गई. Whereas the tax payable is payable by the trust on receipt of this money. So it is your duty to ensure that you collect the documents from the respective persons. Obviously, अगर ये religious activity है तो then fully religious activity है तो then it is not applicable, but for religious and charitable ये applicable है. So खाली अगर आपका ट्रस्ट का activity खाली religious है, wholly religious है, then 115 BBC will not apply. But उन दिन सिनेरियो में आपको registration मिलना भी difficult. So अगर मैं एग्जांपल ले रहा हूँ, अगर आपकी 25 लाख की वॉलंटरी कॉन्ट्रीब्यूशन है और ग्रॉस रिसीट 6 लाख रुपए की है तो 5% ऑफ टोटल 6 लाख प्लस गवर्नमेंट ग्रांट 663 का टोटल 5% 31.65 lakhs will become total donations, that 5% or 1 lakh. So 31.65 up to 35% will become anonymous donations, will be 31.65 तक का आपका टैक्सेबल हो जाएगा at 30%. एक important or other amendment which is brought in is that now most you would have as trustees come to know that there are 2 recent Supreme Court judgments which have created a havoc in the entire trust sector, which is Ahmedabad Urban Development Corporation and New Noble Education Services. ये दोनों सुप्रीम कोर्ट के जो जजमेंट्स रहे हैं लास्ट ईयर अक्टूबर नवंबर के आसपास, बिटवीन सितंबर एंड नवंबर, ये दोनों जजमेंट्स पास हुए हैं. सुप्रीम कोर्ट हैज themselves overturned their own decisions, well settled decisions relating to charitable trust and principles related to charitable trust. And they have gone on the record to say that we are over changing our own decisions of the past, and they have made one amendment as passing comment that whatever now we are saying will be applicable prospective and not retrospectively. So to a small extent उन लोग ने ये benefit दे दिया है. But if you look at new noble education, वहाँ पे what they are saying, काफी सारी जगह पे there are 5 states in India जहाँ पे charity commissioner और Bombay public, I mean charity commissioners की office है. Like in Maharashtra, we have Bombay Public Trust Act. The other 5 states are Maharashtra, Gujarat, because Maharashtra was typically Bombay Public Trust Act before 1950, and Maharashtra and Gujarat was split in 1950. So we have Maharashtra Public Trust Act and the Bombay Public Trust, I mean Gujarat Public Trust Act. Then Goa, Arunachal, I mean Andhra Pradesh and Delhi. There are 5 Telangana, 5 states की जहाँ पे charity commissioner की office है. This is local law restricted to that particular state only, which is applicable for trusts. However, there are other local acts also applicable in other states. Like Rajasthan has a local Devasthan Act. So if you go to Rajasthan, अगर वहाँ पे कोई भी temple है, then it is covered under Devasthan Act. Majority people were not obtaining registrations under those acts or were not following those acts. And the income tax has brought in an amendment from last year that if you do not comply with the law, based on new noble education, what will happen is the Supreme Court is saying that since you do not comply with local laws, you are not, the income tax has the full powers to deregister you as a trust. What will happen if they deregister the trust? Typically 115 TD, that is the tax on accredited income, shall get triggered. Now, what is 115 or tax on accredited income? I will take you back to my example. अपना example में 100 रुपया voluntary contributions था, आपने 85 भी spend किए थे, 15 रुपया was deemed to be accrued. Over the period of time, आपका वो 15 रुपया हर साल accumulate हो गया, assuming you've spent 85 every year, right? So at the start of the year, आपका एक corpus बन चुका है, which is based on that 15% accumulation of every year. Obviously, it will be part, आपने उसको 11.5 में invest करके रखा हुआ है. What the situation now will assume, अगर आपने suppose आपने कोई भी local law में local law comply नहीं किया था, and you have received a notice for cancellation of the from the income tax department, and your trust has been deregistered, let's assume, even after you making your representations. Then within 14 days from the deregistration, the entire opening balance जो आपका accumulation था, उस पे भी आपको MMR पे tax पे 30% plus surcharge plus cess पे pay करना पड़ेगा उसी टाइम पे. So be very, very clear, be very precise. We've seen real life situations where the trusts have got deregistered under the new provisions. Similar, this can also happen in case of merger. अगर कोई trust आप merge कर रहे हो एक दूसरे के साथ, but उसके object similar नहीं है, then also you will face this challenge. But ये applicable नहीं है to trusts which are under dissolution. So that one specific, अगर आप कोई trust dissolve कर रहे हो, तो इसको ये situation apply नहीं होगा और वो accumulation पे tax नहीं लगेगा. In fact, 12AB जो अभी नया registration के लिए जहाँ पे everybody had to re-register, or if you get some new trust and it has to be provisional registration is granted, then what will happen is अगर आपने कोई भी कंडीशंस उसमें जो दी हुई है वो कंप्लाई नहीं की है, then also the income tax department has the power to deregister your trust, and the same accumulations will get taxable earlier also. And the challenge will be कि अगर आपकी जब ये टैक्स अप्लाई होगा तभी आपका अक्यूमुलेशन जो मैंने कहा उसमें सपोज करिए कोई प्रॉपर्टी है तो या अदर कोई एसेट है तो दैट एसेट विल बी टेकन एट फेयर मार्केट वैल्यू. सो लेट्स अज्यूम आपने जैसे 11/5 में कोई इन्वेस्टमेंट करके रखी है प्रॉपर्टी में, बुक्स में वो 10 लाख रुपए पे ही खड़ी है. जब आपने 15% का अक्यूमुलेशन किया था 10 लाख रुपए इन्वेस्ट कर दिए थे उस टाइम पे, बट आज वो वैल्यू 1 करोड़ रुपए की हो गई है उसकी. येट फॉर दिस 115 TD उसकी वैल्यू 1 करोड़ ली जाएगी और उस पर टैक्स लग जाएगा आपको. सो वो आपको एक स्पेसिफिक ध्यान रखना है. मैंने एक आपको कहा था कि इफ यू आर गेटिंग merged into or demerged into some other trust, so then also it will apply. And now let's look at when is the particular date when it will apply. ये provisions कब applicable हो जाएंगे. If you are converting into a trust or other institution, then it will be registration will get cancelled on the date of order cancelling registration. या अगर आपने कोई भी trust deed modify की है which is not in consonance, then the date of adoption or modification of objects. अगर आप merger कर रहे हो and objects are not same, then the date of merger. We come across many times कि सर अब हम ये ट्रस्ट नहीं चला पा रहे बिकॉज ऑफ एक तो ट्रस्टीज नहीं मिल रहे या कोई नया जनरेशन नहीं रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी नहीं करने को रेडी है. then how do we go about it? Then we say that सर आप कोई और एजुकेशनल इंस्टीट्यूशन और कोई भी ट्रस्ट ढूंढो who having similar objects, and then you try and do a merger, because if you don't comply then you will face this challenge. Obviously failure, अगर आपने वो ट्रस्ट का डिसोल्यूशन कर दिया है, you have taken a resolution, and if you don't transfer the assets on dissolution within 12 months period, then the date of dissolution पे भी ये टैक्स पे करने को आ जाएगा आपको. जैसे मैंने आपको बोला था 14 डेज का पीरियड है, वो 14 डेज आपको एप्लीकेबल हो जाएगा फ्रॉम द डेट ऑफ फाइलिंग ऑफ अपील, और इफ नो अपील इज फाइल्ड देन ऑन दैट डे. अगर कोई ऑब्जेक्ट्स आपने मॉडिफाई किए हैं तो 14 डेज फ्रॉम द एंड ऑफ द प्रीवियस ईयर फ्रॉम व्हिच योर मॉडिफिकेशन इज डन, या फिर आपको अपील फाइल करनी है तो अपील के फाइलिंग के टाइम पे, या इफ नो अपील इज फाइल्ड देन विदिन 14 डेज ऑफ दैट ऑर्डर. Apart from the tax payable, interest will also have to be paid 1% from the 15 day, and 115 TF में the trust as well as the trustees or principal officer is also treated as an assessee in default, and therefore if the trust does not pay, then as trustees or as principal officers you yourself are personally liable also. Let's be very, very clear. I had made a point in the starting that many of the times the bank accounts are getting freezed, and therefore majority of the times the trustees cannot make payments even if they want to spend or apply the income. Typically आज ये हो रहा है कि under specifically where there is charity commissioner's office in 5 states, and let's take the example of Maharashtra very specifically. Maharashtra में क्या होता है कि if there is any change which happens in your constitution or even your change in the trustees or in your board, then you are typically supposed to make a change, apply for a change to the deputy or assistant charity commissioner in his register, which is called a change report. If you have to apply, make an application as a change report. And the deputy or the assistant commissioner will have to make a change if you have supplied all the documents along with that application. But suppose if you don't make applications, what will happen is the charity commissioner can freeze your bank accounts. In fact, we have now come across situations where the banks have freezed the accounts of many trusts, saying that you provide us the copies of the all the change reports in chronological order that you've at least filed with Charity Commissioner. Typically, if you supplied all the documents, then the order is to be passed by the Charity Commissioner, and that order is a final proof कि आपका community जो भी change था वो accept हो गया. But banks have been taking a lenient approach to that extent to say कि अगर आपने फाइल कर दिया तो आप हमको दे दीजिए, and we will not stop you from making transactions. But at least that has become mandatory. In fact, हमारे यहाँ पे हमने काफी सारे केसेस देखे जहाँ पे 15-15 साल 20-20 साल तक चेंजेस हुए हैं बोर्ड के ट्रस्टीज और वगैरह में, बट नो इंटीमेशन इज बीन डन. एंड जो प्रेजेंट ट्रस्टीज, जो अर्स्टवाइल ट्रस्टीज थे, वो काफी सारे एक्सपायर हो गए या वर नो मोर देयर, and the present trustees are one which have no relevance over there. But over there, we have managed to get the change reports filed for all the earlier years, get it approved, and ensure that their trust was regularized. So to that extent, I will say that please do take due care. एक दूसरी challenge that we regularly come across is that trust में immovable property ली हुई है, especially in the trust area of say ये जहाँ पे charity commissioner की offices हैं. You are supposed to register these properties with there is a schedule I which is prescribed, schedule 1 भी बोलते हैं उसको, under the Maharashtra Public Trust Act, and you are supposed to get it registered on that schedule I. अगर आप वो नहीं करते हो, then what will happen is जब भी आप property बेचने जाओगे, and there is a separate mechanism for property sale under the Maharashtra Public Trust Act, you are supposed to get prior permission from the Charity Commissioner's office before disposing that immovable property. In fact, most people that you sell the property will ask for this permission from Charity Commissioner. और अगर आपने property register नहीं की थी जब आपने purchase की थी, you will not be able to sell the property. In fact, उस टाइम पे आपका ये हो जाएगा कि पहले आपको property register करवानी पड़ेगी, फिर sale की application करनी पड़ेगी, there will be a delay condonation mechanism, और फिर आप sale कर पाओगे. तो इसीलिए as trustees or as owners or settlers and consultants, I will request you whenever any of your trust purchases a property, please get it registered at that point of time, because when you want to sell it, your buyer will be in a rush to take the property from you, but he himself will force you कि सर आप मेरे को order लाके दो तभी मैं आपको पैसे दूंगा, और आपको तभी starting से activity करनी चालू करेगी, which will ensure a lot of time, and we've seen those cases in the past, and therefore deals getting cancelled because of this challenges. So please take this very, very seriously. आपको 3 महीने के अंदर रजिस्ट्रेशन, आई मीन जब आपने रजिस्टर के लिए उसके 3 महीने के अंदर एप्लीकेशन करनी है चैरिटी कमिश्नर को. Okay. Before I go over here, obviously we will want to take some questions that are from the panel, but I would really like to thank each and every one of you over here for sparing some time. And the way I look at it is that every time that I speak on some of the occasions, it's a good learning part for me. Because every time that I read something, I find something new in the act. And to that extent, I am thankful for FSD and Lions Club, along with Vidharba Tax, the opportunity to learn something new. Yes, Hiral bhai, can we have the questions?
Premal bhai, I feel everybody is absolutely doesn't want any further explanation. No queries left after your brilliant presentation.
Premal bhai, kindly switch off the screen, sir, so we can keep people on the district. Yeah, okay. Okay, now, yeah. If any queries are there, you can openly ask the query, please. Else I can start query. Okay, Premal bhai, one more query. Now the recently for the Maharashtra registration, this Charity Commissioner, they are asking for the user ID and password for annual returns to be filed in the Charity Commissioner. Previously, what used to happen that through online we can file, but there is no login ID and password they are asking. Now the new things has come. They are asking that you have to email the login ID and password. So kindly just throw the light to the people over here, participants. So what is the procedure behind that?
So every trust has now been asked to register with the Maharashtra Public Trust, I mean the Charity Commissioner site. The user ID, password comes through. पहले क्या होता था कि कोई भी अपलोड कर देता. So what Alok bhai saying, I'll take one more minute. Typically, you are आपने आपके जो trust के accounts है, these accounts have to be uploaded on the charity portal. Once you upload on the charity portal, there is a mechanism, different windows are there where you fill in all the amounts and you file उसका एक acknowledgement generate होता है. That acknowledgement has to be signed by minimum 2 and 3, and in some scenarios they have been asking for 3 trustees ka sign, and it has also to be signed by the auditor of your trust, and that physical document has to be submitted again physically to the Charity Commissioner's office. This was the procedure till earlier years. Now they've added one thing, that the trust needs to take a user ID and password. On the portal you have to log in and register. एक user ID password हो जाएगा. The balance activities can be done through that user ID password, and the same process will apply. कि आपको documents, I mean वो form fill up करना पड़ेगा, वो acknowledgement आएगी, acknowledgement पे वापस trustees की sign करनी पड़ेगी, auditor की sign करानी पड़ेगी, and then obviously उसको physically वापस करना होगा.
So, one more queries are coming over here. Yeah, what will be the in chat box? Can you able to see the query? Premal bhai, you can.
Yes, I can.
Yeah, so just one by one you can.
I will start taking. Is the trust, which is a charitable and religious, has name and address of all donations in cash up to 10,000? Is PAN number required? So, sir, anything above 2,000 typically is where you will need a PAN number or an Aadhaar number. Whether how to treat accrued interest of corpus of fund FD. Sir, I think I had taken this specific example कि जहाँ पे आपको interest accumulate हो गया है, you have only 2 options. Either, as I said, अगर आपको next year में receipt आई है before 139 month, so you can use that money. If that money is not received, then accumulation under for 5 years is the only option that you have. There is no other mechanism over there. Whether liabilities outstanding on March would be added back. Sir, it cannot be added. You have to understand the computation mechanism under the Income Tax Act. The computation mechanism very clearly says that there is a trust which receives donations, and then there is applications made against out of that income. The moment you have an expenditure which is not paid, typically you are not given, it is not treated as an application. So it will not be added to the income, but your income will remain constant. Your application is reduced, and therefore you end up paying tax. So it's a reverse scenario. Yes, आपकी taxable income बढ़ जाती है, but income change नहीं होती. Expenditure या application जो है वो आपको नहीं मिलती है. What will be the taxability of excess amount more than 15% under 150? As I said, एक जो भी amounts आपको 115 applicable हो जाएंगे वो 30% MMR, that is 30 maximum marginal rate, 30% plus cess plus surcharge plus cess जो भी applicable है limits के हिसाब से वो taxable है. regarding audit, when we submit 9A and 9B amount limit for audit, I had said 9A and 10. I had already mentioned this, but मैं वापस बोल देता हूँ. Typically, under the Act, it is the 2 months before 139(1), which is mentioned, that is typically 31st August. But clarification is given via circular number 6 of 2023. This circular is dated 24th May 2023. Para number 15 applies to 9A scenarios. Para number 16 applies to situations relating to Form 10. So typically, this circular you can use, and the due date will be extended till 31st of October or 139(1), whichever is the case. This is a beneficial circular, and therefore the courts have been, there is in a well settled law which says that if there is any beneficial circular issued by the department, then it is binding on the department. The assessee is free to use it or not to use it, but it is binding on department, and this being a beneficial circular, therefore will be binding on the department. Whether basic exemption, sorry, before I come to the next question, regarding amount limit for audit. So typically, audit is applicable if you have any income. The trust has income of, has received contributions, voluntary contributions above the basic exemption limit of 2,50,000 without giving any deductions or applications. So 2 lakh ke upar ki income hai, it is audit. In the current year, they have modified Rule 17 and notified under Rule 17. There have been 2 changes which have been done, 2 forms which have been done. Earlier till date, the audit was done under typically Form 10B was prescribed. They have made amendments. Form 10B has been made quite elaborative, and a lot of responsibility डाल दी on trustees to maintain details of specific transactions regarding loans and advances, या corpus मिला तो उसका transactions, या anonymous donations है तो उसकी details, everything आपके ऊपर डाल दिया गया है. So please be clear that as trustees or as consultants or as settlers, you have to be very, very vigilant. If the trust is received voluntary contributions above 5 crores, then Form 10B is applicable for this year. If it is below 5 crores, then Form 10B is applicable, double B. So I have received a lot of questions. Sir, Form 10B था, हमारा तो ये 10B क्या है? Be very clear. अगर आपको audit applicable है, and your trust has received income below 5 crores, it is Form 10BB which is to be filed, and that will be your audit report. If it is above 5 crores, then it is Form 10B which will be applicable. Though, as on date, you are not able to file both of them because income tax की website पे वो forms नहीं आ रहे. So अगर आप अपने trust, typically आपको पता होगा, जैसे आप कोई भी form भरने जाते हो तो typically पहले आपको क्लाइंट के लॉगिन से वो फॉर्म आपके चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट को असाइन करना पड़ता है, एंड देन ही कैन फिल दैट फॉर्म, ऑडिट रिपोर्ट का फॉर्म. एज ऑन टुडे वो इनकम टैक्स की साइट पे इफ यू लॉग इन विद योर ट्रस्ट के यूजर आईडी एंड पासवर्ड से आप आपकी चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट को वो असाइन नहीं कर पाओगे. इट्स स्टिल नॉट एनेबल्ड. क्वेश्चन ये आएगा कि देन हाउ डू वी कंप्लाई? सर, आई हैव नो आंसर एज ऑन टुडे. The deadlines remain the same, which is 31st October. But my limited submission is that there are a lot of representations which has gone to the Honorable Finance Minister, saying that you have brought in amendments to Rule 17 and notified form. In fact, under Rule 17, they have also prescribed कि क्या-क्या documents. In fact, a huge checklist has been given. कि आपको एज अ ट्रस्ट क्या क्या डॉक्यूमेंट्स मेंटेन करने हैं, व्हिच इज वेरी 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 इलैबोरेटिव, बट दे वर ब्रॉट इन बिटवीन द मिडल ऑफ द ईयर. सो अ ह्यूज डिबेट स्टार्टेड कि हम जो पहले के ट्रांजैक्शन उसको कैसे कंप्लाई करें. And that is where the lot of representations have gone to the finance minister to say, sir, how can you brought in an amendment in the middle of the year and yet to expect us to comply with those regulations and satisfy the auditor in his report, who will fill in Form 10B and BB, कि ये सारे transactions के documents will maintain रहे हुए हैं. Now the auditor has to certify कि ये सारे documents हैं वहाँ पे. The trust is maintaining so. That is why these forms have still not come on the portal. My and your humble thoughts will be that this may be postponed to the next year, but answer आज की तारीख में किसी के पास नहीं है. The matter is at a it's right at the FM level, and let's hope sanity or common sense will prevail and we may be spared for this year, but we will definitely be not spared for next year. That's for very sure. Whether basic exemption should be allowed for balance income of tax in the light of 115 BBI? Yes. So the anonymous donations to balance of portions that will automatically get covered. Any other questions?
Okay, any other questions you have? You can ask, otherwise we can start with the vote of thanks.
Sir,
yeah, Premal, go ahead.
Before we start a vote of thanks, I would like to say something. So I would like to have the questions first, and if not, then I would like to obviously say something. So if some people
Premal, proceed.
Sure. A big thank you to everybody as trustees or as chartered accountants, consultants, for giving me an opportunity to explore, accomplish my mission and learn something new along with you. But I would like to really say that since you have spared your valuable time on a Saturday evening, coming over here, learning and listening to what I say, I would like to give something as a special thing. We generally do health checkups for most of our clients and others. For people who have come in here today, due to paucity of time, if any people would like us to do some health checkups for their non-compliance part, we would be more than happy to do it absolutely free for them. The first 3-4 people that we could do in August, and maybe because we keep doing this for people so that we accomplish our mission that no trust or trustees should face penal consequences. So to the limited extent, Alok, with your permission, I may put this to the participants that for the first 3 people, maybe due to paucity of time in August and September, we could do if they wish, we could do a free of cost health checkup for them, so that any non-compliance which is there can be taken care of.
Thank you, Premal. We will take care of that, and definitely we'll come out with this thing. This will be the proposal. People will come 4-5, there will be 40-50 people. Don't worry about that.
I think we should give them to those who
don't worry about that. Yeah.
So maybe on our next session you could discuss the subject about admin expenses of a trust. Where we have like a typical Lions Club where we have a separate account for administrative expenses.
Okay, sir. Yes, sir.
So what will be the taxability aspect connected to, and what is allowed as admin and what is allowed as service? That would be really helpful for all our trusts.
Sure, sir. Sure, Percy, sir. We'll take care. We will organize the webinar and definitely will guide on that. Thank you, sir. Thank you, suggestion.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
And excellent and really great knowledge sharing. Appreciate.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for coming, sir. We are very thankful for you.
My pleasure.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Yeah. Now I'll call Rashesh Bhai to have your view, sir. Rashesh Bhai is our Lions Club member and he's an advocate.
Rashesh bhai, you're not audible. Rashesh bhai, we can't hear you.
Now you can hear?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Very good and exhaustive explanation regarding the charitable trust and its administration. And I think this type of seminar is required more and more to get the upgrade knowledge of the charitable trust. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Rashesh bhai, to be there with you. Now, one more webinar I am planning from you, Rashesh bhai, on a topic which is suggested by you. So, all Lions people should be there. And thank you to all of you. I think Jagdish bhai, last word from your side. Before that, I thanks to Hemant Walkeshwar from Hindu who have joined every time. Hemant ji, thank you so much once again. And thanks to Prakash Vishpure sir, Pankaj Polar sir from Aurangabad and from the Nasik. They are there. Kalandri sir also was there, but I think he must have left. So thank you so much for Kalandri sir and also Vinod bhai from Mumbai Light. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, Jagdish bhai, last word from your side, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, Premal ji. It's a very useful deliberation. Thank you very much. Not only for the practitioners, the other those who are not in practice of trust, they are also well aware what to do and what has to be done if they are trustee in some charitable trust. So this is a very good and very nice and informative deliberation, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, sir. Thank you to all of you, sir. Thank you, Anil bhai. We are ending.
Thank you.